What if a son could outshine his own godly father? What if a prophecy could shatter the balance of divine power? This is the story of Achilles, a hero whose immortality was not granted by gods, but forged by memory. His fate was set long before he drew a sword, caught in the shadows of fear and unavoidable choices. The question is, how did a mortal woman's son become the greatest warrior ever known, and what price did he pay? Friends, be sure to subscribe to my Quiet History channel, like it, and leave a comment of at least 7 words. This is necessary for the channel to function. Share this video with others if you think it's important. Thank you. Achilles' mother was Thetis, a sea goddess unlike any other. She was one of the Nereids, daughters of the ancient sea god Nereus and the Oceanid Doris. Dwelling in the cold, silent depths, Thetis possessed a beauty and power so magnetic even the highest gods, Zeus and Poseidon, were drawn to her. But beneath this divine allure lay a secret, a terrifying prophecy that would change everything forever. To prevent this future threat, they forced Thetis into an impossible choice: marry a mortal man. A union meant to bind down a divine force. Thetis resisted, fleeing and changing forms to escape: water, fire, beasts, serpents, birds, anything to avoid the fate imposed on her. But destiny has claws harder to shake than any god's will. The mortal she was forced to wed was Peleus, a hero of extraordinary renown. King of the Myrmidons, grandson of Zeus himself, Peleus was no ordinary man. He fought alongside Heracles and hunted the Caledonian boar, earning honor and respect across the lands. How Peleus captured Thetis varies. Some say by love, others by force, and some claim divine intervention. But the truth is stark. She was caught, held until she stopped escaping. Their wedding was no mere celebration. It was a gathering of divine and mortal powers alike: Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, Demeter, and even titans and spirits of nature assembled to witness a union meant to blend 2 worlds. Gifts poured down like rain: Athena's shield, forged by Hephaestus's fire, a golden crown shining with the sun's brilliance, music and flowers gracing the halls. Yet one figure was missing. Eris, goddess of discord, was deliberately excluded. Was she forgotten or feared? Regardless, she arrived, uninvited, silent and unyielding. Without a word, she produced a golden apple and cast it into the midst of the guests, a simple act loaded with deadly consequence. This apple would ignite a chain of events no one could stop. The seeds of war, betrayal, and doom were sown in that moment. Because sometimes a single choice can unravel the fate of gods and men alike. Achilles' journey had just begun, but the shadow of that cursed fruit loomed over every step he would take. Before the legendary battles, before the rage that burned across the plains of Troy, before the duel that would echo through eternity, there was a prophecy, a mother's desperate attempt, and a divine rebellion. The story of Achilles is not just about heroism. It is about fear, the fear of choice, loss, and being forgotten. And it all starts here, with a boy destined to become a legend, caught between gods and men, between fate and free will. So settle in. The tale that follows is carved from the harshest realities of human fear and divine politics. It is a story where every decision turns the tide, where every moment teeters on the edge of irreversible consequence. And above all, it is a story about one question. What does it mean to be immortal when death still finds you in memory? Join us on Quiet History as we unravel the threads of prophecy, power, and pain that forged Achilles. Subscribe now, because this legend is far from over. Who holds the power to choose a fate bound to bloodshed? Who dares to claim the title of the fairest when the prize is a golden apple inscribed, "To the most beautiful"? At a lavish wedding feast, three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, simultaneously reach for the apple, each certain the prize belongs to her. A silence falls, thick with tension. The celebration fractures into chaos, marking the inception of a feud that echoes through eternity. But when the gods themselves cannot settle the dispute, a mortal is called to decide, and his choice will ignite a war unlike any before. Zeus, unwilling to judge, names Paris, a young Trojan shepherd and prince, to decide who deserves the apple. This seemingly simple decision carries the weight of destiny. Paris, swayed by Aphrodite's promise to grant him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, chooses her. This choice unravels the threads of peace. Helen, wife of Spartan king Menelaus, is taken away to Troy. The gods divide into factions. The Greeks prepare for war. The world braces for the storm Paris's choice has unleashed. Amid preparations for the Trojan expedition, fate circles back to a single man, Achilles. Prophecy foretells that without Achilles, the Greeks cannot triumph. Yet the same prophecy carries a cruel price. If Achilles joins the war at Troy's walls, he will die. Victory demands sacrifice. Glory demands an end. This truth shakes even the immortals. The gods speak first, then Thetis, Achilles' mother, pleads with Peleus to protect her son. But how do you save a life destined to be lost? In desperation, they decide to hide Achilles away, far from war's call and the gaze of the world. They choose the island of Skyros, a remote sanctuary ruled by the stoic king Lycomedes. His palace, nestled high in the mountains, is shielded from prying eyes. It has many daughters, but no sons. Here, among the girls, Achilles will vanish. But the plan is madness, to disguise the mighty warrior as a maiden, to cloak a destined hero in the fragile guise of a girl. What price will this deception demand? Achilles is given a woman's name. Some say Pyrrha, the red-haired, mirroring the flame of his hair. Clothed in feminine garb, his hair braided, he steps into Lycomedes' court as one of the daughters. At first his movements are awkward, his voice too deep, his presence unnatural. Yet the girls accept him, mistaking his silence and intensity for shyness. Slowly Achilles adapts, joining their games, playing the lyre, dancing, even sharing quiet moments beneath rain-soaked skies. But inside, the warrior's spirit roars, caged and restless. Achilles is no coward. He does not hide from battle because of fear. He hides because he must. To join the war is to embrace death. Yet every day on Skyros deepens his yearning. His heart rebels. His hands crave the bowstring. His chest aches for the freedom of the battlefield. The prison of disguise tightens, suffocating the hero whose fate is inescapable. What happens when a soul refuses to remain hidden? But fate's cruelty cuts deeper still. Within the palace walls, an unexpected bond forms. One of Lycomedes' daughters, Didamia, is drawn to this strange girl with fierce eyes and a silent intensity. And Achilles does not push her away. Whether born from shared secrets whispered in the night, or the raw vulnerability beneath the disguise, a profound connection ignites between them, one that defies myth and expectation. Here, in the sanctuary of lies, love blooms. Months pass, and from this forbidden union comes a child, Neoptolemus. This boy, born of hidden truths, will carry the weight of two intertwined destinies, his father's secret past and the future of a war that refuses to end. But for now, he is just an infant, a fragile hope in a world trembling on the edge of chaos. Meanwhile, the Greek forces gather in readiness. Heroes arrive one by one: Agamemnon, Menelaus, Odysseus, Nestor, Diomedes. But the mightiest of all is still missing. The fate of the war hinges on the return of Achilles, the warrior who bears both the key to victory and the shadow of death. The question looms: will Achilles rise from exile to claim his destiny, or will the prophecy seal the doom of Troy without him? The stage is set, and the future trembles on the brink of a choice that will echo through the ages. What if the fate of a war hinged on a single man's hidden identity? Achilles, the mightiest Greek warrior, was not yet ready to embrace his destiny. Under the guise of a cunning traitor, Odysseus arrived at Skyros with a secret mission: to find the elusive hero whose name alone could decide the fate of Troy. But how would he reveal Achilles, who hid among the daughters of King Lycomedes? The answer lay in a carefully set trap, a sudden cry of battle that would shatter the calm. Odysseus brought gifts, jewels, fabrics, mirrors, and, hidden among them, deadly weapons: a sword, spear, and shield. As the girls eagerly reached for the sparkling treasures, only one figure hung back, eyes fixed not on the gold, but on the arms. Odysseus's sharp gaze caught the silent signal. Then, without warning, his men unleashed a fierce battle cry. Panic erupted. Girls screamed. Except one. Draped in a gown, she grabbed the sword in an instant and took a warrior's stance. The mask of Achilles was torn away. "Achilles, son of Peleus," Odysseus declared, voice cutting through the stunned silence. Time had come to cast away the shadows. No one moved to stop the revelation, not even King Lycomedes. All awaited the hero's choice. Sword lowered, a breath held. Achilles looked toward his weapons, then the sky. That night, they say, Thetis, his mother, returned with desperate pleas. "Stay, choose a peaceful life, a bride, a son, a quiet home, a long old age." But Achilles already knew. To remain is to be forgotten. To fight means death. His words hung heavy like a prophecy. But my name will live as long as songs are sung. The irreversible choice made, Achilles embraced his fate. At dawn, he left Skyros behind, setting his course for Aulis, where ships awaited and a war loomed large. No more hiding. The name of Achilles echoed once again, a storm poised to break. This was not a story born from clashing swords or siege towers. It began at a feast, a celebration where not all were welcome. At the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, gods gathered, yet discord festered. The goddess of strife, Eris, cruelly uninvited, cast a golden apple inscribed, "To the fairest." Suddenly, harmony shattered, replaced by bitter rivalry among three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each claimed the coveted title, none willing to concede. The quarrel escalated, threatening to tear the divine assembly apart. Zeus, unwilling to judge, assigned the mortal prince Paris of Troy to decide their fate. Each goddess offered him irresistible gifts. Hera promised dominion over all lands. Athena granted wisdom and triumph in battle. Aphrodite tempted him with the love of the most beautiful woman alive. The stakes were immense, the choice fateful. Paris's answer would ignite a chain of devastation. Paris chose Aphrodite, securing Helen as his reward, the wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta, whose beauty was said to rival the gods themselves. Some say she followed Paris willingly, others that she was taken by force. Regardless, the result was the same. The queen of Sparta was now in Troy, an insult to Menelaus's honor, and a spark that would ignite a continental war. But this was more than a personal vendetta. It was a sworn oath. Before Helen's marriage, all the noble Greeks swore a sacred pact. Should anyone threaten this union, they would unite to restore justice. That promise now summoned every king, every warrior, and every clan to answer the call. The port of Aulis became the gathering ground for an unstoppable force. One by one, kings and heroes arrived. Odysseus from Ithaca, Nestor from Pylos, Diomedes from Argos, both Ajaxes from Salamis and Locris, and many others. At their head stood Agamemnon, elder brother of Menelaus and king of Mycenae, named commander of the expedition. Hundreds of ships lined the shore, thousands of warriors armed and ready. Yet amidst the rising tension, one crucial figure was still missing. The prophet Calchas warned the Greeks. Their victory was impossible without a sacrifice yet to come. What if one man's choice could alter the fate of an entire war? Could Achilles, the most feared warrior of his age, truly be the linchpin on which Greece's destiny hung? The echoes of his name rippled through the camp as he arrived from Skyros, young and unyielding, his eyes burning with the knowledge that this was a war with no return. Yet, beneath the surface of his fearlessness, a storm of decisions was about to unleash consequences far beyond the battlefield. Achilles came accompanied by the Myrmidons, warriors loyal not only to him, but to an ideal of invincibility that preceded their very footsteps. His arrival in Aulis was no mere troop movement. It was the ignition of a force that would shift the balance of power. Once a pupil, now a legend, Achilles was said to have healed Telephus by scraping shavings from his spear's shaft, a weapon intertwined with his very essence. That act of mercy sealed a pact. Telephus would no longer fight the Greeks and would guide them through the unknown paths to Troy. But what price did such salvation demand? The Greek army, vast and restless, found in Achilles a symbol that transcended mortal limits. To his comrades, he was a beacon of strength. To enemies, a nightmare whispered in the dark. His youth was scarred with a quiet ferocity, silent, inexorable, and the name Achilles began to carry both hope and dread, a duality that foreshadowed the blood to come. Yet in the shadows of glory, the first cracks of discord were already forming. Years had passed since the Greeks set foot on Troas, yet the walls of Troy stood defiantly, monumental and divine. Battle after battle raged beneath the relentless sun, each day a slow bleeding of men and spirit. Achilles, though avoiding councils and crowns, commanded the battlefield with a fury unmatched. His every strike became legend, his name growing louder in every whispered prayer and fearful chant. But amid this relentless war, a single captive woman would ignite a conflict no sword could quell. Briseis, not a queen but a noble woman, captured from the conquered city of Lernus, was more than a prize. She was a symbol of Achilles' complex humanity. Widowed and bereft, her presence in the camp was both a comfort and a silent testament to the cost of war. Rumors swirled around her. Some spoke of a concubine, others of a companion who filled the void of loneliness in the fiercest of warriors. But as alliances shifted, her fate would become the spark for a devastating rupture. Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae and commander of the Greek forces, was a man driven by power and pride. When his prize, Chryseis, the priestess of Apollo, was demanded back by her father, the aging priest Chryses, Agamemnon's refusal set divine wrath into motion. A plague swept through the camp, death stalking the Greeks with terrifying speed. The seer Calchas declared that the disease would only cease when Chryseis was returned. But Agamemnon's concession came with a price. He would claim Briseis from Achilles to compensate his lost honor. This was no mere political maneuver. It was an open insult, a declaration that no personal dignity could stand against the will of a king. For Achilles, the greatest warrior who saved armies and bled for his comrades, this was a betrayal deeper than any wound. His honor spat upon, his loyalty challenged. He faced a choice that would shatter the fragile unity of the Greeks. And yet, he did not shout. He did not strike back. He simply rose and left the council, setting the stage for a conflict that would echo through eternity. What happens when the greatest warrior refuses to fight? Achilles returned to his tent, declaring he would no longer take part in the war. Not in his world, not in this slow, grinding conflict. He withdrew from a battle he no longer believed in, severing ties with the army that once felt like a brotherhood. In his eyes, the Greek forces had become nothing more than a pride-driven mob, controlled by one man's arrogance. This was the moment the Greeks lost their strongest warrior, and with it, their hope. The silence that followed was deafening. No one dared say it aloud, but the shadow of Achilles' absence fell heavy across the ranks. Without their fiercest fighter, the war councils echoed hollow, attacks faltered, and confidence began to crumble like dry earth. While Achilles sat in his tent, lost in silence, the tide of battle shifted. The Trojans, led by Hector, the brave, wise, and just son of King Priam, rose with renewed vigor. Hector changed the face of war. No longer hiding behind towering walls, the Trojans pressed forward, pushing the Greeks back across the open plains. With every step, the Greeks retreated closer to the sea, their ships, once proudly resting high on the shore, now becoming the last line of defense. The desperation was palpable, and in the growing darkness, Achilles' name was whispered again, an echo of lost strength. But still, he remained silent. His tent was closed, his spear untouched. Beside him stayed Patroclus, his friend, his shadow, the only one brave enough to speak when others remained mute. Patroclus was no match for Achilles in strength, but he was deep and loyal beyond measure. He saw the storm of pain brewing inside Achilles, not a weakness, but a wound, inflicted not by enemies, but by betrayal from within. Patroclus pleaded with Achilles to return to the fight. He spoke of comrades fallen, of the war raging just beyond their walls, of the enemy pressing ever closer to their very tents. But Achilles either could not hear or refused to listen. He sat by the sea, as if waiting for the earth itself to acknowledge his truth. Each night he heard the clash of battle. Each day he learned who had died. His fury burned, but it was no longer directed outward. It was a fire consuming himself. In this drawn-out silence, Patroclus realized waiting was no longer an option. He began preparing to take on a burden he did not yet fully understand, one that would soon change everything. Meanwhile, the threat loomed ever closer. Hector and his forces advanced step by relentless step toward the Greek ships. What once seemed impossible was now becoming reality. The Greeks faltered, their long-held ground near the walls of Troy shaking. Fear crept into their hearts as the name of Achilles, once their beacon of hope, echoed through the camp. Yet he remained in his tent, staring at the horizon in silence, harboring a rage that refused to die and a wound that refused to heal. His decision was made. Honor meant more than the cries of the dying. Day after day, Patroclus stayed close, understanding the torment Achilles hid beneath his stoic silence. Each report of death cracked the fragile barrier around Achilles' heart. Patroclus waited patiently, knowing the moment to act was near. When it became clear the Trojans would break through and set the ships ablaze, Patroclus finally stepped into the tent to speak the words that would change the course of the war. When Achilles finally emerged onto the battlefield again, the earth itself seemed transformed. The Greek army breathed new life, as if the very air thickened with renewed purpose. The silent fear that had gripped the Trojans burst forth like a storm. They saw him approach, unshaken, unhidden, and the war would never be the same. What drives a man to walk into certain death? Hector, proud son of Troy, knew this moment was inevitable. The city begged him to stay behind the walls. Priam pleaded, his mother, Queen Hecuba, begged. But Hector understood. If he hid, the walls would fall before the stones ever did. Achilles moved forward like a force of nature, stripped of all armor but his own raging fury. He ignored orders, dismissed counsel, and advanced relentlessly. Those who crossed his path didn't even realize their fate until the spear had already struck. His every strike was precise, his every step driven by destiny itself. Before the clash, there was only a moment, a charged silence. Two warriors locked eyes. Hector, resigned to death, and Achilles, fearless of it. No words pierced the air, no cries echoed out. Only that gaze, heavy with meaning, sealing the fate of both men. Hector lunged first, relying on speed and agility to outmaneuver the Greek. But Achilles was faster, far faster. The once unbeatable champion of Troy could not even land a single blow. The gods watched silently, except for Athena, invisible but guiding Achilles' every move with deadly precision.
In a desperate plea, Hector gasped, "If I die, return my body to my father. Do not deny me my funeral rites." Yet Achilles' face was void of mercy, stripped of humanity. "As you spared Patroclus, so shall I have mercy on you," he said, then hurled his spear without hesitation.
Hector fell like a mighty tree felled in an open field. He still breathed, eyes fixed, as Achilles approached in silence. Stripping the armor from his fallen foe, Achilles left only the tunic, a cruel token of his dominance. Then came the moment that shook even the gods. Achilles tied Hector's lifeless body by the ankles to his chariot. Without pause, he charged across the battlefield, dragging Troy's pride through dust and blood. The camp roared with a mixture of Greek triumph and Trojan despair, voices merging into the cry of the earth itself. Hector's body circled the camp 3 times. No one dared stop Achilles. He ignored prayers, curses, and pleas alike, eyes fixed on a horizon only he could see, where he hoped to find the friend he lost. Victory was hollow. Achilles stood among broken shields, corpses, and screams, realizing that revenge was a void that could never be filled. Patroclus would never return. His soul still screamed within Achilles, and even his star-lit shield only reflected pain. But Achilles' path had not ended with Hector's death. The war dragged on, its breath growing quieter, but never offering peace or relief. The victory he and all sought brought no solace. He returned to battle not for glory, not for triumph, but because turning back was impossible. The oath was fulfilled, but the pain had fused with his very being. He fought relentlessly, not from desire, but from necessity. Achilles' fame soared, yet he no longer sought songs or honor. He fought in silence, driven by a stubborn dignity that refused to yield, locked forever in the cycle of loss and vengeance. Subscribe to Quiet History to witness the shadows cast by fate, where every choice seals a destiny. What drives a man to face his final duty when the weight of inevitability crushes every step? Achilles moved like a shadow cast by fate itself, silent, unyielding, untouched by counsel or debate. The Greeks, once proud and fearless, now dared not meet his gaze, their reverence mingled with dread. In this silence, a new force emerged on the Trojan side, shifting the balance of a war already steeped in tragedy. Memnon, son of the dawn goddess Eos and king of the Ethiopians, arrived like a storm wrapped in honor. Towering and regal, surrounded by loyal warriors, he entered Troy not as a boastful conqueror, but as a noble ally. His presence was a beacon of hope for the desperate Trojans, yet he wielded his power with quiet dignity, refusing to shout vengeance or glory. But when the Trojans suffered, Memnon raised his spear and charged into the fray, changing the course of battle with every strike. Among those who fell to Memnon's spear was Antilochus, son of Nestor, a rare soul whom even Achilles respected, bound to him by memories of home and youth. The death of Antilochus shattered something deep within Achilles, awakening a pain long buried beneath his wrath. This was no longer a quest for revenge like that against Hector. It was a brutal reminder of the fragile thread connecting life and loss. Without fury, but with cold resolve, Achilles challenged Memnon to single combat. Memnon accepted, knowing there was no escape from this fateful clash. Their duel was more than a battle of strength. It was a collision of sorrow and destiny. Even the gods watched with anxious hearts as the two warriors fought, their blows echoing the weight of a war that could not be undone. In the end, it was Achilles, driven not by rage but by an empty void within, who emerged victorious. Memnon fell, and his mother Eos shrouded him in radiant light, carrying his body beyond the edge of the world, leaving the battlefield in haunting silence. But the war's relentless tide did not pause for grief. Almost immediately, a new force stormed the walls of Troy: Penthesilea, queen of the Amazons. She arrived fierce and unyielding, surrounded by a legion of warrior women, not seeking spoils or favor, but driven by belief, by the conviction that a woman has the right to shape the fate of legends, even if that path leads to death. She refused the safety of the walls, demanding to meet the enemy in open battle. Achilles, upon hearing of her arrival, seized his spear once more, stepping forward without hesitation or counsel. Their duel was a tempest, two forces crashing in a violent dance of skill and will. Penthesilea fought with grace and ferocity, her courage worthy of song. Achilles, flawless and unyielding, recognized in her a warrior destined for legend. When her body finally fell, he removed her helmet to see the face beneath. Young, almost childlike, serene even in death. In that silent moment, Achilles felt the fragile thread between life and humanity stretched taut once again. It was the second time in this endless war that he confronted the delicate balance between existence and oblivion. He spoke no word, but the Greeks, watching, understood. The heart of their greatest hero was breaking anew, unseen by all but the gods. Achilles' fate was sealed long before his final breath. The woman who would become his beloved, Briseis, awaited him beyond the battlefield. Yet his name did not fade with his body. Songs of his deeds echoed through generations, whispered by heroes stepping into battle, chanted by boys grasping their first spears. His story was a warning and a beacon. The path he chose was one few could walk to the end. He was a man. He was a son of a goddess. He was a hero who embraced both his doom and his life with equal resolve. And so, the memory of Achilles became more than a tale. It became an eternal flame of glory, calling to every soul who ever stood between fear and honor. If you've walked this path with us, remember to subscribe to Quiet History, where the echoes of the past never fade.